Her coat was already on when he walked through the door, not draped over the back of her chair the way it might be if she were still deciding on. Buttoned. Her bag was sitting on the table beside her untouched coffee, and she had angled herself slightly toward the exit, the way a person does when they have already decided to leave, but are waiting for a reason to do it politely. Audrey Sinclair had been in this restaurant for 22 minutes. She knew because she had checked her watch 3 times and her phone twice, and because the candle on the table had burned down exactly 1 centimeter since she sat down. She had a habit of measuring things. It was one of the reasons she was very good at her job and not particularly easy to be around. The man who came through the door was not what she had expected. She had not expected much. After 4 years of setups, her expectations had been reduced to something modest. She hoped he would be on time, that he would not spend the first 10 minutes talking about his ex-wife, and that he would not order the lobster on someone else's tab. She had been disappointed on all 3 counts in various combinations, more than once. This man was late, so he had already failed the first test. But he did not look panicked the way late people usually looked. He paused just inside the door, looked around the room without rushing, found her table, and walked toward it with the same unhurried steadiness he might use to walk across a parking lot. He was somewhere in his mid-50s, maybe older. He wore a navy jacket over a plain white shirt, no tie, no pocket square, no cologne she could detect from across the room. His hair was going gray at the sides. He was not especially tall. He was not, by any obvious measure, impressive. He reached the table and pulled out the chair across from her. "You're Audrey," he said. "Not a question." "I am," she said. "You're late." "I know," he sat down. "There was an accident on the Queensway. Not mine. Someone else's. I stayed to give a statement because I saw it happen." He said this the way he might say he had stopped for gas. No apology loaded into it, no performance of guilt. Just information. Audrey looked at him for a moment. "I'm Jeffrey Marsh," he said. "I know," she said, the same way he had said it. He almost smiled. She could not tell if he had decided against it or if that was simply the shape of his face. The server came. He ordered water and the lamb. She had already ordered, and her food had already arrived and was sitting cooling in front of her. He did not comment on this. He did not suggest she start without him or apologize again for the delay. He simply picked up the menu, read it, and ordered, and when the server left he turned back to her, as if they had not been interrupted at all. "Your friend Diane speaks very highly of you," he said. "Diane speaks very highly of everyone," Audrey said. "It's her worst quality." He did pause at that. "I thought it was one of her better ones." "That's because you've never been set up with someone who turned out to be a compulsive gambler because Diane thought he had a good heart." Jeffrey looked at her steadily. "How many of these have you done?" "Enough," she said. This is my second." She had not expected that. She had been doing this long enough to recognize the particular exhaustion that came off people who had been through the circuit for years. The careful posture, the rehearsed opening questions, the way their eyes moved around the restaurant as if cataloging the exits the same way she was. He did not have any of that. He looked irritatingly like a man who had simply agreed to have dinner. "Just the second," she said. "The first was about a year ago, a colleague of Janet's." He said it without elaboration, as if Janet were a word she already knew. Then he registered that she didn't and added, "My wife. She passed away 3 years ago." Audrey put her fork down. "I'm sorry." "Thank you," he said, and he meant it, and then he moved on. No grieving silence, no redirect to change the subject. He just let it sit where it was, at its proper weight, and kept going. She found herself picking up her fork again. The restaurant was a French bistro in Westboro that Diane had chosen. It was the kind of place with good acoustics and soft lighting, and a wine list that went on too long. The kind of place designed for exactly this type of evening. Audrey had been here once before, for a dinner that had ended badly, and she had not been back. She was not sure why she had agreed to come back now, except that Diane had been asking for 2 months, and at a certain point it was easier to say yes and get it over with. She was the CFO of a civil engineering firm. She was 53 years old. She had been divorced for 9 years from a man she had married when she was 30 and stopped recognizing by 36. She owned a house in Canada that had 4 bedrooms and 1 person in it, which she told herself was efficient, because the guest room was a home office and the second guest room had a very good stationary bike. She was not unhappy. She wanted to be very clear about that to herself. in the way that people are only clear about things they are slightly uncertain of. She did not need a relationship. She was not looking for one. She had agreed to this dinner as a favor to Diane, and also, somewhere in the quieter part of herself she didn't examine too often, because it had been a long time since she had sat across a table from someone who wanted to know her. Jeffrey was looking at her. Not the way men sometimes looked at her, with that particular type of attention that was more about inventory than interest. He was looking at her the way she imagined he looked at everything, with mild, unhurried curiosity, as if she were a problem that might have several interesting solutions, and he was in no particular hurry to find any of them. "What do you do?" she asked. Diane had told her something. She couldn't remember what. "I'm a structural engineer," he said. She stared at him. Diane didn't mention that. She mentioned it in passing, I think. "Does it matter?" "It matters," Audrey said, "because I've been managing capital budgets for structural engineering projects for 16 years, and you've been letting me talk to you about traffic incident reporting like you don't know what a shear wall is." He did smile then, properly. It was a contained smile, the kind that happened mostly in the eyes. "I haven't let you do anything. You were talking. I was listening. You could have said something. You were doing fine without me," he said. She looked at him across the table and tried to decide if this was charming or aggravating. She landed provisionally on both. His food arrived. He ate the way he did everything else, it seemed, without ceremony, without comment, without making a production of enjoying it or not enjoying it. She had eaten half her steak and forgotten about the rest, which was unusual. She normally finished what was on her plate. "You mentioned a project in the fall," she said, because Diane had given her a single-sentence summary of his life and she was now working with almost nothing. "Something in Nova Scotia, Cape Breton, a bridge rehabilitation. We've been doing assessment work for about 8 months. You travel out there? 3 or 4 times a year. The rest is out of the Ottawa office." He cut into the lamb. "Do you travel for work?" "Calgary mostly. Sometimes Vancouver. We have a large water infrastructure project out there that's been going sideways for 2 years. She paused. "One of our consultants has been using a creep analysis approach that I've been told is appropriate, but that has cost us $4 million in remediation and I've stopped believing it." He looked up. "What kind of soil conditions?" "Marine clay." He set his knife down, not dramatically. Just set it down and gave her his full attention for the first time in a way that was different from the attention he'd been giving her before, which had already been more attention than most people gave. "Who's your consultant?" she told him. He was quiet for a moment. "I know his work," he said. "He's competent. But marine clay in that corridor is inconsistent. If he's running standard consolidation models without site-specific calibration for the secondary compression phase, you'll keep seeing that variance." Audrey stared at him. "Sorry," he said. "Don't apologize," she said. "Say that again." He said it again more slowly. She asked 3 questions. He answered all 3, and the third answer turned into a longer explanation that involved him sketching something on the back of the paper napkin with a pen he produced from his jacket pocket, a real pen, the kind with weight to it. And she found herself leaning forward over the table to look at what he was drawing and not being aware, until she noticed the candle had burned down another ½ centimeter, that the restaurant around them had gotten quieter. They had been here for 90 minutes. Her coat was still buttoned. She reached up and undid the top button without looking at it. There was a question she had been not asking, and she knew she had been not asking it because the answer might make the rest of the evening go differently. "You said this is your 2nd time doing this," she said. "After 3 years. What made you say yes to Diane?" He considered that for a moment. He was not a man. She had already figured out who answered questions before he was ready to. "My daughter," he said finally. She pointed out that I had not been to dinner with anyone who wasn't a colleague or a family member in 2.5 years, and that this was, and I'm using her exact words, getting a bit sad. How old is she? 26. She's a nurse in Guelph. She has her mother's talent for saying difficult things without making them into arguments. He looked at the napkin sketch between them. "What about you?" "My friend Diane," Audrey said, "has been asking since January." "I ran out of excuses." "That's the honest answer," he said. "I'm a very honest person." "I know," he said. She looked up. "How do you know?" "You've known me for an hour and a half because," he said, You told me I was right about the creep analysis the moment you understood why I was right, without spending any time defending your consultant first. Most people defend their consultant first. It's a reasonable thing to do. He turned the napkin over, folded it once. You didn't. Audrey had been complimented before on her intelligence, on her competence, on her work ethic. She had been told she was intimidating, which was usually a criticism dressed as a compliment. She had been told she was lovely, which she understood to be a thing people said. She had not been complimented on the specific way she received information before. She looked out the window at the street. It was raining now, a thin, cold November rain. There was a taxi idling at the corner. She had been planning to take a taxi home. She was no longer thinking about the taxi. Your daughter, she said. What's her name? Sasha, he said. For my mother's sister, who she never met. Does she look like Janet? He was quiet for a moment, but not the kind of quiet that meant she had said something wrong. The kind that meant he was deciding how truthfully to answer. Around the eyes, he said. Yes, that must be strange, Audrey said. And also probably good. It is exactly both of those things, he said. She understood then that she had been waiting for him to flatten out. That was what she had been doing, she realized, all evening. She had been waiting for the moment when he became ordinary, when the careful patience revealed itself as blankness, when the contained quality turned out to be emptiness rather than depth. She had been wrong about people before, in the other direction, had found substance where there was performance, had confused intensity for character, and she had learned to wait. She was still waiting. He had not flattened out. They ordered coffee. Neither of them had asked for a dessert menu, but the server brought one anyway, and Jeffrey looked at it briefly and ordered the tart tatin, and she found herself ordering the same thing, because it had been a long time since she had ordered dessert at a restaurant she had only gone to get an obligation over with. You didn't ask, she said. Ask what? The thing people always ask. Whether I've been seeing anyone, whether I've been on many of these, what I'm looking for. I know what I'd think, he said. If someone started a dinner by asking me what I was looking for, I'd think we were doing paperwork. She almost laughed. She stopped it, but it was close. What would you think? He asked. The same thing, she said. He nodded as if this had confirmed something. He picked up his coffee. Outside the rain had gotten heavier, and she could hear it against the window now, a steady sound that filled in the gaps in the conversation without being uncomfortable, which was unusual. She was generally not good with silence in social situations. She tended to fill it, which she had always considered a flaw. Jeffrey did not seem to feel that silence required filling. She was finding, for the first time in a long time, that she did not either. Can I ask you something? She said. That you might find intrusive? Yes. When you said you gave a statement about the accident on the Queensway, you didn't have to do that. You weren't involved. Why did you stop? He looked at her for a moment. Because I saw it happen, he said, and the woman who was hit was standing by the side of the road by herself when I pulled over, and she was shaking, and her phone was broken, and someone needed to stay with her until the paramedics came. It was a simple answer. He had not reached for it or built up to it. It was simply what had happened. She thought about the 22 minutes she had sat here, coat on, timing the candle. She thought about the 4 years of these evenings and the careful architecture of expectation she had built to survive them. She thought about the taxi at the corner, which was no longer there, and about the voice in her head that had started saying you could go the moment she sat down, and had been saying it ever since, quieter and quieter, and was now not saying it at all. The tart tatin came. It was good. She did not have a policy, exactly, but she had a practice, developed over the years, of not extending evenings. When dinner was finished, dinner was finished. She did not suggest a walk, a second venue, a continuation. She thanked her date, she wished him well, and she went home, and if there was a second date it was arranged by text over the following day or two, after everyone had had a chance to return to themselves. She did not think of it as self-protection. She thought of it as practicality. There's a good place down by the canal, she said. A diner, actually. I know that sounds. She stopped because it did sound, and she was not sure what she was doing. He waited. It's open late, she said. If you wanted coffee that wasn't from here, their pie is much better than this. She was looking at the tart tatin as she said it. Jeffrey looked at her across the table for a moment. He had the expression of a man who has just found something he was not looking for and is taking a moment to understand what it is. "All right," he said. She looked up. "All right?" "Yes," he said. "Let's go." She reached for her coat. She did not button it. The diner was called the Canal Anchor, and it had been on that particular stretch of Queen Elizabeth Driveway for longer than either of them had been in Ottawa. The vinyl booths were the original vinyl, dark red and worn smooth at the edges. The coffee came in heavy white mugs. There was a pie case by the counter that rotated slowly and hypnotically and contained, tonight, a butter tart pie that the man behind the counter said had been made that afternoon. They ordered 2 slices and more coffee and sat in the booth by the window where the rain against the glass made a sound like static, low and continuous. She told him about the water infrastructure project in full, not the summary version she had given the board or the cleaned-up version she used with external stakeholders, but the actual version, the one with the specific places where the decisions had been wrong and her understanding of why they had been wrong at the time, and what she knew now that she had not known then. He listened and asked questions in the specific way of someone who was following closely, not the polite nodding that passed for listening in most meetings, but actual engagement, the kind where the question arrived 3 sentences after the thing it was asking about, because he had needed the 3 sentences to build it. She said, at some point, "I don't usually talk about work this much." "You haven't been talking about work," he said. "You've been talking about a decision you've been carrying." She stopped. He looked at her and did not look away. "The difference," he said, "matters." She had been carrying it. She had been carrying it for 2 years, quietly, in the part of her professional self where she kept the things she had handled badly or slowly or with incomplete information, the list she reviewed sometimes at 4 a.m., in the way that was not productive and that she continued to do anyway. She had not said this to anyone. She had not needed to say it to him exactly. He had simply seen it. "Your daughter's right," she said. He tilted his head slightly. "You've been letting her worry about you," Audrey said. "That's not a criticism. I just think she's not wrong." He was quiet for a moment. He turned his mug slightly on the table. A small adjustment, not restless, thoughtful. "I know," he said. "I've been telling myself it was respect for the process." He paused. "That's true, but it can also be an excuse." "Yes," she said. "Is that what you've been doing?" he asked. She thought about the 4 years, the coat, the candle she had been timing, the taxi she had been ready to take. "Yes," she said. "Probably." The coffee was very good, better than the bistro's, and the butter tart pie was exactly what he had said it would be, which was remarkable, and the rain against the window had settled into a steadier rhythm, and neither of them looked at their watches. She did not know how long they had been sitting there when he said, "Can I ask you something?" "Yes." "Why did you agree to this in the first place?" "Not tonight specifically. This whole process." She looked at the pie case. It was still rotating. Someone had taken the last piece of blueberry. "Because," she said, and then she stopped, because the real answer was in there somewhere, but she was used to finding the respectable answer first and the real one had to be coaxed out. She tried again. "Because I realized about 8 months ago that I could not remember the last conversation I had had that I did not want to end." He said nothing, and I decided, she said, that this was probably something I should address. He was looking at her with the steady, unhurried attention she had stopped noticing about 40 minutes in and was now noticing again. "Did it work?" he said. She looked at him. "Addressing it," he said. "I don't know yet," she said. He nodded slowly. Outside, a car moved through a puddle and sent a brief wash of light across the window, and the rain came back to fill the silence. And he turned his mug again on the table, and she watched his hands, which were the hands of someone who worked with them, capable-looking, unhurried, the hands that had drawn on the napkin and had stayed on a rainy highway with a woman whose phone was broken. "I haven't wanted a conversation to end," she said, "tonight." He looked at her. She looked back. Neither of them looked away. It was nearly midnight when they stood outside under the narrow awning of the Canal Anchor, watching the rain come down on the driveway. She had called a car. He had a truck parked 2 blocks north, and he would get wet walking to it, but he had said this without complaint, the same way he said everything, as if the facts of a situation were simply what they were. "This was not what I expected," she said. "No," he said. "Me neither." A car moved slowly down the driveway, not hers. They stood there a moment longer. I don't usually do this, she said, and then stopped because she did not know exactly what she was about to say. Offer her card. Suggest he call. Say something that locked them into a next step in the methodical way she arranged most things. She did not want to arrange this methodically. She was not sure what she wanted. You don't have to, he said. She looked at him. Decide anything tonight, he said. It's all right. The car that was hers pulled up to the curb. The rain was steady and cold, and the light from the diner was warm behind them. She picked up her bag. She thought about the candle she had been timing, the coat she had kept buttoned, the taxi at the corner she had forgotten about. She thought about a conversation she had not wanted to end, and about 8 months of not being able to say that, and about a napkin sketch still somewhere in her coat pocket. Thank you for staying, she said. On the Queensway. He looked at her for a moment. She meant it 2 ways, and they both knew it. Of course, he said. She got in the car. She did not look back at the awning. She did not need to. She knew without looking that he was still standing there, unhurried, in the rain, the same way he did everything, waiting without impatience for whatever came next. The napkin was in her pocket. She did not throw it away.